All right, thank you and good morning. I'm so pleased to be here representing Campaign 2000 End Child and Family Poverty in Canada and Family Service Toronto. The National Coalition of Campaign 2000 was formed in 1991 out of concern and interest in holding government to account for their promise of ending child and family poverty in Canada by the year 2000. Unfortunately, the year 2000 has come and gone, and numerous other commitments to end poverty have come and gone, but we still have rates of poverty that are exceedingly high for a country of our wealth, and we haven't had sustained action plans to actually address the issues. We have a child poverty rate in Canada today of 19%. Over 1.3 million children live in poverty as well. Shamefully, poverty rates are even higher among marginalized communities of racialized Indigenous families, families impacted by disability, new immigrants to Canada, as well as children in families led by a lone female parent. My focus this morning will be on the challenges of measuring poverty. And this is fitting for Campaign 2000 particularly because part of our work involves publicizing data that actually wasn't publicly available for many years on the state of child and family poverty. We do this through our annual report cards, which contribute to keeping a spotlight both politically as well as in the media on child and family poverty. In addition to talking about the poverty rate among specific groups, we also talk about the different dimensions associated with poverty, such as housing, social assistance, childcare, food insecurity, health, income inequality, employment, and income security. Indeed, poverty and the related dimensions we cover are among the key social determinants of health. And of course, it's been estimated that the social and economic circumstances in which people live account for 50% of their health outcomes, while access to health care, genetics, and the environment account for the other 50%. Despite the importance of these factors in shaping the lives of so many Canadians, data on these topics can often be difficult to access and the subject of hot debates. They can be contested subjects. You may be wondering as well, when I say poverty or I talk about poverty, how is it defined? And this is the topic really that we're here to discuss in my piece. Well, when most policymakers, well, okay, that's for the discussion piece. When most policymakers, researchers, and advocates discuss poverty, we're talking about income levels. So answering a simple question like what is the poverty line in Canada is difficult because Canada does not have an official poverty line. Instead, we have three different low-income lines in this country. We have the Low Income Cutoff, or LICO, the Market Basket Measure, and the Low Income Measure, or LIM. I'll just say a bit about each to set them apart. The LICO is an income threshold below which a family will likely spend 20% of its income, more than the average family, on the necessities of food, shelter, and clothing. The calculation is based on the relationship between 1992 household incomes and consumption patterns. The Market Basket Measure is a measure of material deprivation. It's based on the cost of a specific basket of goods and services that represents a modest basic standard of living, though the estimate of housing in the MBM is arguably too low. The Low Income Measure, or LIM, is relative, and households are considered low income if their income is less than half of the national median. So the calculation of LIM is adjusted by family size and the number of children, and it's based on income level, not expenses. Each of these measures tell a slightly different story about the issue of poverty in Canada. Some peg the child poverty rate at 10% in the case of the LICO, while the LIM pegs it at about 19%, as I reported. As a result, debates about the prevalence of poverty and the effectiveness of policy solutions are very common in our political and national media arenas, and they often distract from the fact that far too many people in Canada live in poverty and struggle to access decent shelter, nutritious food, and sustaining work to maintain and access good health. The reality is that we need good data to inform strong policymaking, program design, and community planning. Unfortunately, we have had the situation over the last several years with changes in the collection of data that has made tracking poverty and community experience extremely challenging. There have been changes and cancellations of surveys we've relied on in the past to to track the poverty rate in Canada, such as the Survey of Labour and Income Dynamics. There have been reductions in staffing and funding at Statistics Canada, and of course, the cancellation of the mandatory long-form census in 2010. Because of that cancellation in particular, we have a 10-year gap in information about poverty and levels of poverty among the most marginalized groups in our country, who have the highest rates of poverty. So Campaign 2000 is one of the groups that has struggled to keep issues of gender, racialization, disability, indigeneity, and immigration and its relationship to poverty on the public radar. We've also spoken out and advocated for the reinstatement of the long-form census, as well as other surveys, arguing again that good data matters and it matters to what happens in this country. Of course, we're in the midst of census fever right now in this country, which is a good thing, absolutely. But that gap in reliable data from 2006 to 16 has negatively impacted service planning, research, and advocacy in Canada, as the experiences of marginalized groups in poverty have been in danger of being erased. If we don't know what's happening, if we don't have the data, we can't talk about it in the same way as we would be able to otherwise. It's really because of social research and powerful campaigns led by people in poverty and workers that have been instrumental in raising awareness about the struggles of marginalized groups, including low-income people, over the last 10 or more years. We know many of us in this room are familiar with topics such as precarious and low-wage work, the record demand for affordable housing, astronomical childcare and tuition costs, the rampant the acknowledgement, finally, of racial profiling, and the fact that the average woman working in Ontario makes only 70 cents to every dollar earned by a man. Those issues are in the public realm because of community work and community advocacy, and they deserve and demand solutions from policymakers as well. As a group of folks and as advocates interested in reducing poverty, we have opportunities before us, and good measurement will actually be key to keeping the government accountable to taking action against poverty. Campaign 2000 has long advocated for federal government to implement a national anti-poverty strategy. For the first time in our history, we've been around since '91, we have a federal commitment to create a Canadian poverty reduction strategy. And, so this is something that is very important and has a lot of potential. In order, though, for this initiative to reach its potential, we need to ensure that we avoid pitfalls and distractions from consulting multiple income poverty lines. So we've called on the federal government to adopt the low-income measure as its official poverty line. With an official poverty measure, we can hold the government accountable for its promises to reduce poverty and understand if the programs that are being implemented are effective or not, and actually meet the stated goal of reducing poverty. I'll just say why we recommend the LIM. So the low-income measure is produced in a timely manner, 16 to 18 months after the year in question. It's considered the international gold standard for comparisons with other countries. It is comprehensive in that it takes into account social exclusion, the stress related to social comparisons, and exposure to stressful environments that people experience. It's also the most strongly correlated to health outcomes of any of the income lines as well. Just to give you a sense, for a lone parent with one child, they're considered to be low income if their income is below around $24,300 a year, according to that measure. In addition to calling for this official income poverty line, we have called on the government to establish a suite of poverty indicators or measures that take into account social and material deprivation and experiences of people living in poverty. Like all of us, those who live in poverty are much more than a figure on their income tax return. They're much more than a dollar amount, and the quality of life and the experiences that they have need to be captured, and their voices and realities, the voices and realities of people with lived experience of poverty are crucial to the design of poverty reduction strategies and policies that meet community needs, in addition to telling us whether we are successful, if we are moving the yardsticks, and if we're meeting the test of reducing and eradicating poverty. So with that, that's why I feel this morning's panel is very, very important. Our wonderful speakers are going to speak to their experiences of poverty, and we're so lucky to have them here to share their perspectives and analysis on their own experience, but also on the issues and the money dimensions that encompass poverty.